other noise that's going to be happening around here. The bad guys are on their way down. They'll probably be here within the next 45 minutes. So if you really want to get yourself enlightened with a brilliant speaker, I think everybody knows Mr. Spenser. Most people have heard him before with the JDL. Most people have read a lot of the books that he has. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Mr. Spenser and just relax and get a great education.
I want to thank you all very much for being here. This is very important that we make a stand because the forces that we face thrive on fear and intimidation. That's how they advance. They frighten their opposition into submission. And so we have to show them that we are not afraid and that we are going to stand. And what we are standing for is nothing less. This is not an overstatement. We are standing for life as opposed to death. This is a life and death struggle. And that was epitomized just the other day by the brutal murder of the 13-year-old girl, Halal Ariel, by a Palestinian Islamic jihadist while she was sleeping in her bed. I'm sure you all know the story. And what you probably also know is how her killer was lionized immediately as a hero, praised as a hero by his own mother, and praised as a hero by Hamas and by moderate Fatah. They all celebrate these kinds of murders, and they will say, jihadis all around the world say, not just in Israel, but in Boston, after the Boston Marathon massacre, and elsewhere around the world, they say, we will win, they say, because we love death more than you love life. Now we know that when they say that, that is an admission of defeat. We know that when they say that we will win because we love life more than they love death. And that life always conquers and life always triumphs. You put concrete over grass and the blades of grass will break the concrete and poke through. And life will always triumph in the end. But we have to stand, and we have to stand strong and understand that when what we are facing is indeed a group that is lovers of death, lovers of hatred, lovers of violence, lovers of disillusion, lovers of everything that is evil. This is no overstatement. When they celebrate and pass out candies over the murder of a 13-year-old girl, they are showing that they are one of the principal forces of evil in the world today. And that we have to stand for what is good and what is right. Now, one thing about that is that makes things very easy. Because all we have to do is stand and tell the truth, and the truth will ultimately prevail. We are being inundated now with lies. We are being inundated now with falsehoods. Even going to the name of this event, Al-Quds Day, when the name Jerusalem is the name of the city from time immemorial, but it's emblematic of the cultural appropriation and imperialism of these forces, that they rename the city, they try to erase the history of the Jews in Israel, and they cover us over with these lies. Even the Palestinian people in itself is a lie. There is no ethnic or national difference between the Palestinian Arabs and the Jordanian or the Syrian or the Lebanese Arabs. Right. There was never a Palestinian state. There was never a king or a president or any kind of ruler of Palestine. There was never a Palestinian entity of any kind. As a matter of fact, as a region, the name was Palestine, given by the Romans after they expelled the Jews in 134 AD and renamed Judea Palestine, a name they picked out of the Bible because it was the name of the ancient enemies of the Israelites. It was only to annoy and to humiliate the Jews that the area was ever called Palestine, and even after that, there was never a Palestinian people until the 1960s. You look at the records from 1948, from the establishment of the State of Israel, there's no mention of Palestinians. There was talk at the UN in the 1948 settlement that the Arabs rejected, there was talk of an Arab state being created and a Jewish state being created. There was no mention of Palestinians. They were invented in the 1960s. And they were invented in the 1960s as a public relations move, a propaganda move that has been frighteningly effective. What happened was the world opinion was all in favor of Israel, because Israel was a tiny Jewish state surrounded by 22 giant Arab states that wanted to destroy it and spoke openly of destroying it. And so, the KGB and Yasser Arafat devised a Palestinian state, devised the idea of a Palestinian people, in order to give the illusion of an even smaller minority threatened by a supposedly giant Israeli war machine. The biggest mistake the Israeli government made was to endorse this falsehood and to start speaking about a Palestinian people. There are already Muslim Arab states all over the area that the Palestinians could have found a homeland in, could have settled in. And people talk about being expelled from a land. We all know, of course, that they were told to leave by their leaders because the Arab states that surrounded Israel in 1948 were determined to destroy it and were moving to destroy it, and assured the Muslim Arabs that if they left the war zones, they would be able to return within a few weeks once Israel was destroyed. After World War II, there were refugees all over the world. There were millions of refugees in Europe. There was a tremendous dislocation caused by the creation of the state of Pakistan and the partition of India. You never hear about German refugees, Sudeten Germans, or Polish refugees. You never hear about them today. But we still have second, third, fourth generation Palestinian refugees. Why is this? Because the Muslim Arab states, who have no ethnic or national difference from the Palestinians, they refused to grant the Muslim Arabs from Israel citizenship. And they refused to grant them citizenship so they could use their refugee status as an ongoing stick to beat the state of Israel with. We have to restate these truths and remind ourselves of them and remind the world of them, because we are being inundated with lies and falsehoods all the time. But the thing about telling the truth is it's very easy. You don't have to have nearly as good a memory as you do if you're a liar. All you have to do is say what is reality. Reality is that on Palestinian Authority television and on Al-Aqsa TV, which is Hamas, every day, there is genocidal incitement and calls to kill the Israelis, to kill the Jews. Every day we see this material. There were Muslim clerics standing in mosques, and their sermons were being broadcast over Palestinian Authority television, calling on Muslims to stab Jews. And there was a billboard in Nazareth that called upon Muslims to run over Jews in their cars. Now, what is the result of this constant incitement? We have seen the regular and even increasingly frequent stabbings of Israeli civilians all over Israel, and vehicular jihad accidents where there's clearly a hit and run and an intention to kill. These things are no accidents. This is an ongoing incitement, a love of death, a love of destruction, a love of violence and hatred. And that must not prevail, and it cannot prevail. Ultimately, there is no doubt whatsoever that the truth will out and that the forces of hatred and evil will lose. But we know from the lessons of history that the forces of hatred and evil can prevail for a tremendously long period of time. The Soviet Union lasted for 70 years. Nazi Germany, thank God, only lasted for 12, but that was 12 too long. If we do not stand at things like this today, and if we do not stand every time the forces of hatred and evil are asserting themselves now, then we are facing yet another period of that kind. And so I thank you all for coming out and exhort you to stand no matter what. Things may be very difficult, but remember, I, of course, am an American, and the Declaration of Independence of the United States, it ends with the signers saying that to this great cause they pledge their lives and their fortunes and their sacred honor. And they did that because they knew that if they did not stand, that their children and their children's children, their lives and fortunes and sacred honor would be perhaps irrevocably lost. And we face the same choice now. That it is sometimes difficult, it is sometimes painful, it is sometimes inconvenient, and it's probably going to get worse. But at the same time, if we are not ready to put our lives and fortunes and sacred honor on the line, then one thing we can be sure of is that our children and our children's children will have it much worse than it is now. And that those forces over there of hatred and violence and evil that glorify death and love it, they will be able to destroy the lives of many more people than they would if we stand and if we continue to stand no matter what. Courage is not an absence of fear. Courage is standing even when one is afraid, knowing that one has to do the right thing anyway. And so I thank you for being here to do that. And thank you very much for being here.
Bravo! Woo!